"We don't need your junk," my daughter-in-law sneered as she tossed the neatly wrapped gift into the trash. My son, Ethan, didn't stop her. He just stood there, arms folded, watching with that same dismissive half-smile he'd worn more and more lately. They thought I was nothing but an old burden, clinging to memories and trinkets. What they didn't know was that the gift wasn't just a sweater or a book, it was a test. And when they laughed at it, I knew exactly what I had to do. By the end of that week, the credit cards, the cars, and even their dream vacation would vanish into thin air. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I never imagined my life would come to this, standing in my own living room, watching my daughter-in-law Melissa sneer at something I'd spent hours preparing. I had chosen a small gift for them, something personal. A photo album, carefully filled with pictures of Ethan's childhood, our family's early years, moments we had built together with love and sacrifice. I thought it would remind them of where we came from, of the roots that made us strong. Melissa didn't see it that way. She peeled the wrapping with dramatic slowness, flipped open the album, and laughed. "Seriously? Who even prints photos anymore?" She tossed it into the trash bin beside her like it was garbage. Ethan chuckled softly, as if to agree. "Mom, you don't have to give us stuff like this. We're fine." The way he said fine, like I was intruding, like my efforts meant nothing, stabbed deeper than any knife. I forced a smile, though my chest felt heavy. "It's not junk," I said quietly. "It's family." Melissa rolled her eyes. Family is about moving forward, not clinging to the past. We don't need dusty albums or secondhand things. We're building our own life, not living in yours. Her words hit me like cold water. I looked at Ethan hoping, just once, that he'd defend me. But he just shifted his weight, avoiding my eyes. That silence was worse than any insult. After they left, the house felt emptier than it had in years. I sat in my favorite armchair, staring at the trash bin where the album still sat, its cover bent. My hands shook as I pulled it out, brushing off imaginary dirt. I traced the photo on the front, Ethan at 6 years old, missing his front teeth, smiling at me like I was his whole world. Where had that boy gone? The anger came slowly, then all at once. It wasn't just about the album. It was about every time Melissa had dismissed me, every time Ethan had allowed it, every time they had treated my sacrifices as worthless. I had paid for their wedding, helped them buy their first house, even supported them when Ethan's business struggled. And now, I was nothing but junk to them. I thought about what Robert, my late husband, would say. He always believed respect was earned, not given. He had built his company from scratch, and when we married, I helped him turn it into an empire. Even after he passed, I managed it, invested wisely, and grew our fortune. Ethan and Melissa lived in comfort because of what Robert and I had built. And yet, they had the audacity to mock me. I sat there in the dim light of the living room, the photo album on my lap, and I realized something. They had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just Ethan's mother. I wasn't just Melissa's old lady. I was Margaret Ellis, the woman who had outsmarted competitors, navigated markets, and protected a $200 million estate. If they thought I was powerless, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I called Blake, my attorney, the same man who had stood by me through Robert's passing and every legal battle since. "Blake," I said, my voice calm, "I want to make some changes." He chuckled. "Changes?" "Margaret, every time you say that, it means someone's about to get a surprise." I smiled faintly. "They laughed at me, Blake. Threw my gift away. They think I'm weak. I want to remind them that everything they enjoy, their cars, their trips, their lifestyle, exists because of me. And I can take it away just as easily." There was silence on the line, then a slow laugh. "Ah. So it's time to close the faucet, is it?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Close it tight." Blake didn't argue. He never did. He knew when my mind was set. Within hours, he began drafting the necessary paperwork. Joint accounts? Frozen. Credit cards I had guaranteed? Cancelled. The trust that covered their vacations and Melissa's shopping trips? Locked. Meanwhile, I began to plan something else. A gift of my own, a lesson. Because you see, revenge doesn't always come in fire or fury. Sometimes it comes in silence, in the quiet withdrawal of everything ungrateful hands thought was theirs. That evening, Ethan called. His tone was casual at first, but underneath I could hear the edge of worry. "Hey Mom. Weird thing, our card didn't go through today. Did something happen with the bank?" I let the silence stretch just long enough to unsettle him. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said evenly. "After all, you don't need my junk, right?" His breath caught. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I smiled into the receiver, though he couldn't see it. "You'll understand soon enough." When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to their cruelty, I was writing the story. And this was only the beginning. The first crack in their perfect picture happened before breakfast. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan that tried to sound calm and failed. "Card decline. Grocery total $183.75. We're in line. Is there a bank outage?" I stared at the message for a moment, then set the phone face down beside my coffee. The morning light came in through the blinds in thin gold stripes, the same light that used to fall across Ethan's cereal bowl when he was 8 and would whistle off-key while tying his shoes. There was a time he would have been embarrassed to make me wait for a please or a thank you. Somewhere along the line, Melissa taught him a different language, one that turned gratitude into expectation. A second text arrived. "Mom?" I finished my coffee. Then I dialed his number. He answered on the first ring, breathless, like a teenager caught sneaking in past curfew. "Mom, our card isn't working. The cashier's giving me a look. Did something happen?" My voice was even. "Something did happen." "What?" "You told me you didn't need my junk. I decided to believe you." A beat of silence. I could hear the hollow hum of the store through the line, beeps from the registers, a child crying somewhere near the bakery. Melissa's voice came faint and sharp in the background. "Ask her if she forgot to pay the bill. Tell her this is embarrassing." "Mom," he tried again, softer, "can we talk about this later? People are staring." "You can afford embarrassment," I said, and I hung up. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it to be clear. There are lessons money can't teach until money steps out of the room. The card they used for groceries was a company account I'd allowed them to access for family necessities when Ethan's business had a lean year. Temporary, I'd said then. 4 years later it was still temporary, and the line items had grown from groceries to vacations, handbags, and a membership at a gym that served cucumber water and fluff towels like a resort. By mid-morning, the ripples spread. The dealership called to confirm that the insurance policy attached to the SUV had been removed from my corporate umbrella effective immediately. "We'll need proof of your son's independent coverage by end of day," the man said, polite but firm. I thanked him and asked him to send the memo in writing. Blake emailed at 10:03 a.m. with the subject line, "Completed." He had a way of putting a bow on a pile of brick. Inside were confirmations I'd requested, removal of both of them as authorized users on my cards, freeze of discretionary distributions from the family trust, revocation of the old temporary stipend that had become a habit, cancellation of the corporate cell lines I'd foolishly kept in my name for emergencies. A separate note confirmed the travel concierge had been instructed to cancel the anniversary package for Aruba next month. Non-refundable, but recoverable via travel insurance, if they had purchased any. I smiled. Melissa never bought insurance. She liked to say, "The universe owes me good luck." At noon, my doorbell camera pinged. A courier stood on my porch with a bouquet the size of a barbecue grill. The card read, "Let's reset. Dinner tonight? M." I checked the sender. The florist charged my account. Melissa had sent me flowers on my dime to ask for a meeting. The arrogance would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. I called the florist and instructed them to pick up the bouquet and return it to sender with a cashier's check for the full amount drawn from Melissa's personal card on file from last Mother's Day. If she disputes the charge, I added, please send her a copy of the text where she authorized substitutions. She cares about those things. At 2, my housekeeper, Nora, came into my study carrying the small photo album I had retrieved from the trash. I'd repaired the bent cover with a thin strip of linen tape and laid it on the desk like something sacred. "You want me to shelve it, Mrs. Ellis?" she asked gently. "Yes," I said. "On the mantel. Front and center." She gave me a long look, the kind of look only someone who has seen your good days and your grief can give, and squeezed my shoulder before she left. The weight of her small kindness steadied me. Ethan didn't call again until late afternoon. When he did, his voice had the brittle polish people wear when they want something and are ashamed to ask. "Mom, can we come by? Dinner." 7, I said. "No gifts." I spent the next hour setting the table with simple things. Plain white plates, the old silver Robert and I used on Tuesdays when there wasn't anything to celebrate but time. I made roast chicken and potatoes, the way I did when Ethan was 14 and could eat for 3. I sliced a loaf of bread. I put the album in the center of the table like a guest. They arrived 2 minutes late and swept in like the weather. Melissa walked ahead of Ethan, all perfume and polished teeth. She wore a cream sweater dress that probably had a name and a price, and she carried a tight smile like a weapon. Ethan trailed, hands deep in his pockets, eyes scanning the table as if the food might launch into a lecture. I let them sit. I poured water. We passed the bread without speaking. I carved the chicken and placed a perfect thigh on each of their plates. They both stared at their food, not lifting forks. It felt like we were all waiting for a cue only I had. "Mom," Ethan started, "there's been a misunderstanding." "There has," I said. Melissa leaned forward, palms open in a gesture meant to look sincere. "We love you. We appreciate you. But the way things happened this morning, at the store, the card." "Embarrassing," I supplied. Her smile thinned. "Yes. You embarrassed yourselves," I said. "I just didn't save you from it." Her mouth opened and closed, and for a moment she looked young, like the girl who had cried the first Thanksgiving I hosted for her because I asked her to bring ice and she thought I meant she wasn't trusted to cook. Back then she had apologized. Life, and likes, had taught her different tricks since. Ethan's chair creaked. "Mom, we've been under a lot of pressure. The app launch is behind, cash flow is tight." He gave a little laugh that wasn't a laugh. "You remember what startup life is like?" "I remember exactly what it's like," I said. "I remember working 3 jobs while you slept upstairs. I remember selling my car to make payroll for 5 families who had kids of their own. I remember your father calling suppliers at midnight and me standing at the sink wondering if the water company would give us 2 more days." "Yes, Ethan. I remember." He looked away. Melissa picked up her napkin and then set it back down without using it. "We shouldn't have said what we said about the gift," she murmured. "It was thoughtless." "You said it was junk," I said evenly. "You threw away your husband's childhood." She blanched. "I didn't mean." "You meant exactly what you said," I replied. "And you said exactly what you meant." The room breathed. Outside, a siren wailed far away and faded. He tried again, softer. "What do you want from us, Mom?" I could have said respect, but that word has been misused so much it's become a costume. People wear it when they want obedience. That isn't what I wanted. I wanted recognition. I wanted truth. "I want you to grow up," I said. "I want you to stop living on autopilot with a handout and a story ready. I want you to treat money like air, use it to live, not to inflate." Melissa made an impatient sound. "So is this permanent? The cards? The trust? You can't just." "I can," I said, and I kept my voice quiet because quiet is more frightening than thunder. "I can, and I did. You will receive the basic stipend the trust documents require until the board approves a change. I remain the board." Her face flushed. "Board? What board? It's a family trust." "It is," I said. "Established by your father-in-law and me. Administered by a board comprised of me, Blake, and 2 outside fiduciaries who have known me longer than either of you have known yourselves. We added them the year you posted a photo of our beach house on your public account with the caption 'Summer before the will.' You remember that? 37,000 strangers do." Ethan's head snapped toward her. "You did what?" She stared at me like I'd read her diary. "It was a joke." "Jokes tell truths," I said. The conversation that followed was part plea, part negotiation, part inventory of grievances. They moved through the 5 stages of losing an ATM: denial, "This is insane," anger, "After everything we've done for you," bargaining, "What if we cut back like a lot," something like depression, Ethan's voice when he whispered, "I don't want to fight with you, Mom," and only for a flicker, acceptance. When it was over, I stood and collected the plates. Melissa hadn't taken a bite. Ethan had eaten the potatoes, the chicken sat cooling, untouched. I brought out a small chocolate cake I'd baked that morning, not because it was a celebration, but because sweetness has a way of softening sharp edges for a minute. I set it down and sliced 3 thin pieces. No one reached for a fork. "You'll get a letter tomorrow," I said. "It outlines the changes. It also offers you something." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "What?" "Employment," I said. "Not at my company. At the foundation your father and I started before he died, the one that funds vocational apprenticeships for veterans. They need a program coordinator who can manage logistics and social calendars and budgets. Part-time to start. I think you might be very good at it if you stop thinking everything is beneath you." She flushed a real human red I hadn't seen on her in years. "That's not my field." "It could be," I said. "You're organized. You know how to sell. You're persuasive when you aren't trying to be cute. Try using those muscles for something that doesn't end with a ring light." Silence. Then a small voice I recognized from far away, Ethan's voice when he was 7 and wanted to quit piano. "And me. You," I said, "are meeting with my old CFO next week. He's going to look at your books and tell you what you don't want to hear. You can ignore him and keep drowning, or you can listen and learn how to build something real. Your choice. Always your choice." His eyes shone then, anger, pride, relief, it was hard to tell. He nodded once, quick and jerky. "Okay." "Okay," I echoed. They left without the cake. I boxed 2 slices and sent them home with Nora the next day. What followed wasn't glamorous. Revenge rarely is when you do it with a pen instead of a match. Their gym membership asked for a new card and got a declined message with a cheerful emoticon. The SUV's insurance lapsed and the dealership placed it on the no-drive list until proof of coverage arrived. The Aruba hotel sent a polite cancellation notice and a less polite invoice. The HMA emailed Ethan about an overdue landscaping fee he'd never noticed because I had always paid it. The utilities at their house stayed on, of course they did, I'm not a monster, but a friendly note from the gas company explained how to set up autopay. Life, that stubborn teacher, started its slow instruction. For 3 days, they did not call. On the 4th, I received an email from Melissa. No subject line. No emoji. Just 3 sentences that surprised me. "I applied for the coordinator job. I'm not qualified, but I can learn. We were unkind. I'm sorry. Do you still have the album?" I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I replied, "Yes. It's on the mantel. You may look at it when you're ready to see it." That evening, Ethan came by alone. He stood in the doorway like he used to when he was small and had torn a hole in his pants and didn't know how to say it. "Mom," he said, "can I sit?" We talked for an hour. About money and fear. About the way pride can feel like a life raft until it tips you into the water. About how easy it is to become the kind of person who throws away an album because the camera on your phone makes you believe memories live in clouds instead of in hands. He cried once. Not big movie tears. The quiet kind that embarrass grown men. He wiped them away and kept talking. When he stood to leave, he paused by the mantel and placed his palm flat on the album cover, very gently, like you touch a sleeping child's back. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said. "I almost did," I answered, "because truth is a gift too. I decided to give up on paying for you instead." He huffed a laugh and shook his head. "Fair." After he left, I walked through the house turning off lamps the way I always do, clockwise, from the front room to the kitchen. When I reached the back door, I paused. The yard was black and still, the honeysuckle alive with scent. Somewhere a dog barked. Far away a train moaned. Ordinary life, that faithful drum, kept beating. The phone buzzed. A message from Blake. Progress report, application received from M. Interview set for Friday. CFO meeting scheduled for proud of you. I typed back. Not the goal, but a start. He replied with a single thumbs up. He knows me well enough to keep his victory laps to himself. The next morning, my coffee tasted sweeter. Maybe it was the sugar, maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the knowledge that the faucet I had tightened could crack open again one day, not for indulgence, but for investment, into the version of my son and his wife who believed in building, not taking. Into a future where help felt like scaffolding, not like a leash. Before lunch, Melissa sent a second email. If I bring lunch, can we go through the album together? I want to know who's in the picture on page 7. I looked up at the mantel. Page 7 held a photograph of a boy in a red sweater with a cowlick and a grin, standing between two men in work boots in front of the first warehouse Robert and I ever leased. The boy was Ethan. The men were two brothers who taught him to sweep sawdust like it was a craft and not a chore. One of them had signed the back, "To the kid who will run this place someday." I wrote back, "Lunch at noon. Bring paper plates. We'll make a mess." At 11:59, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Melissa holding a bag of sandwiches and, tucked under her arm like something rare, a small notebook. She looked nervous. Good. Nerves mean something real might happen. We ate on the coffee table, and then we opened the album and let the past teach the present. I told her names and stories. She asked questions that didn't have to do with prices or brands. When we reached page 7, she touched the signature with one fingertip and smiled, small and shy. "I didn't have this," she said, almost to herself. "A someday. I've been chasing today, so hard I forgot to make one." "Make one then," I said. We finished at page 64. She closed the cover and sat back. "I was wrong," she said. "About a lot." "Good," I said. "Wrong is the hinge on which better swings." She laughed, surprised, then she wiped at her eyes and stood. At the door, she turned. "We'll get insurance today. And the HMA thing. And," she swallowed, "thank you for not burning it all down." "Oh, Melissa," I said, and I wasn't unkind, "you have no idea how many matches I own." She grinned, shook her head, and left. That night, when I told Nora what had happened, she made a face like she didn't want to hope out loud. "Do you think they'll change?" she asked. "I think," I said, "that money taught them one language. Now they can learn another." "And if they don't?" "Then they'll live within their means," I said, and for the first time in months, the sentence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a path. Before I went to bed, I wrote 2 notes and left them on the kitchen table for the morning mail. The first, to Blake: "When the foundation hires Melissa, pay her fairly and measure her like any other candidate. No discounts. No extras." The second, to the CFO: "Be gentle. Be honest. If he wants to learn, teach him everything." I turned off the last lamp and stood at the foot of the stairs. The house was dark and kind. On the mantel, the album caught a slice of streetlight and glowed. Upstairs, my room held the familiar creaks and shadows. I lay down and listened to my heart knock a steady beat against the mattress. Old bones, old house, old stories, but something young had slipped back into the rooms, possibility. Sleep came like a warm tide. Just before it carried me under, I thought of the gift in the trash and the hands that had thrown it. I pictured those same hands flipping pages, pointing, asking, learning. I pictured Ethan's palm on the cover, gentle as a prayer. And I let myself hope that what I had cancelled wasn't their future, but their old life. Because tomorrow would bring bills and meetings and maybe backsliding and certainly new excuses. But it would also bring noon and paper plates and page 7 and the word someday said out loud by someone who had forgotten it existed. The faucet was still off. The well was not. Some things you don't turn, you guard. I slept well. If you've ever sat across from someone you love and realize they no longer see you, then you'll understand what that week felt like for me. I wasn't a mother to Ethan anymore. I wasn't even a person. I was an account, one they thought would never run dry. But accounts close. Wells run dry. And I was finished pretending my sacrifice was infinite. The days after Melissa's awkward lunch felt strange, like walking on a new road that looked familiar but slanted just enough to keep you unsteady. She had shown up with sandwiches, had even asked about faces in the photo album, but trust isn't a faucet. You don't twist it and get clean water. Trust has to be built brick by brick, apology by apology, action by action. Ethan was quieter than her. He texted occasionally, short messages like "meeting went okay." CFO tough but fair, or working on budgets. Harder than I thought. I never pressed him for more. If he wanted to rebuild, he had to learn how to stand without me holding him up. Still, I kept my eyes open. I had spent 78 years learning that people show you who they are when the walls close in. Melissa had started at the foundation's front desk, answering phones, shadowing coordinators. By the end of her first week, Blake told me she'd stayed after hours to color-code the volunteer schedule. "She's trying," he said carefully. "Time will tell if it sticks." Time. That word echoed in me. Robert used to say time was the most ruthless creditor, always collecting, never forgiving. I wondered if Ethan and Melissa understood that yet. The third week brought the first true test. It was a Thursday night, crisp and sharp, the kind of night where the air tastes like metal and makes your bones ache. I had just settled into my armchair with tea when the doorbell rang. My heart clenched before I even stood. I knew it would be them. Through the peephole, I saw Ethan. His hair was messy, his shoulders slumped. Melissa stood a step behind him, arms crossed, lips tight. I opened the door. "Mom," Ethan said softly. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, and they came in. The house smelled of cinnamon candles and old wood, a smell Robert had loved. Ethan sat at the table immediately, his hands pressed flat against the polished surface. Melissa hesitated before pulling out a chair. "What is it?" I asked. He swallowed. "We're behind. Rent. Utilities. We're learning, but it's hard." "And Melissa," he stopped, glancing at her. Melissa lifted her chin. "I've been working every day, Margaret. I'm not afraid of effort. But effort doesn't pay bills when they pile this fast." Her words were sharp, but her eyes were not mocking this time. They were tired. I leaned on my cane, studying them. "So you came to ask me to open the faucet again?" "No." Ethan's answer was quick, almost desperate. "Not like before. I know we abused it. But, maybe alone. Structured. With terms. Not handouts. Something we can prove ourselves with." Melissa frowned but didn't contradict him. That silence, from her, was progress. I sat slowly, folding my hands. Why should I trust that you won't waste it? Why should I believe this isn't just another performance? Melissa's face reddened. "Because we've been humiliated enough." Her voice cracked on the word humiliated. "Do you know what it feels like to stand at a checkout counter and swipe a card 3 times while the cashier looks at you like you're a thief? Or to call your gym and hear them say your access has been revoked because your account is flagged? I've had enough of that. We've both had enough." Ethan whispered, "We're not asking for Aruba. We're asking for a chance." I looked between them, at the cracks in their armor, at the faint glimmer of humility I hadn't seen before. My heart ached, because beneath my anger, beneath their greed, was the same truth: they were my family. But family without accountability is poison. "All right," I said finally. "I'll consider it. But only if you agree to my terms." Melissa tensed. "Which are?" "First," I said, "transparency. Every dollar accounted for, every receipt logged, no exceptions. Second, Ethan will meet with the CFO every week until he says you're capable of managing on your own. Third, Melissa, you will continue at the foundation, and your supervisor, not me, will evaluate your progress. Fourth, you will stop treating what I give as if it were owed. It is not. It never has been." They were silent for a long time. The only sound was the clock ticking on the mantel. Finally, Ethan nodded. "We can do that." Melissa's lips tightened, but she gave a small nod too. "Fine." I stood. "Then you'll receive a contract tomorrow. Blake will draw it up. If you break it, the faucet closes forever." They left without hugging me, but their eyes held something new. Not love, not yet. But respect's first seed, fear of losing everything, had been planted. That night, I opened the album again. Page 7, Ethan's red sweater, the warehouse. I traced the faded ink where one of the brothers had written someday. And I prayed silently, let someday mean something again. Over the next month, I watched. I saw Melissa arrive early at the foundation, hair tied back, carrying coffee not for herself but for the volunteers. I saw Ethan stumble through spreadsheets, his pride bruised, but his head bent low in concentration. I saw fewer photos of dinners out on their social media, fewer flashy posts, more silence. One afternoon, Blake called. "Margaret, you're not going to believe this." Ethan turned down an investor who wanted him to fudge numbers. He actually said, "My mom would kill me." I laughed then, for the first time in weeks. A laugh that felt light, uncoiled. But as much as progress soothed me, I stayed cautious. People change slowly, and sometimes they don't change at all. I wasn't ready to trust yet. And then came the call that tested everything. It was midnight when my phone rang. I fumbled for it, half asleep. Ethan's voice came through, ragged, shaking. "Mom," he said. "Something happened. We need you." My blood ran cold. The phone pressed against my ear, Ethan's voice trembling in a way I hadn't heard since he was a boy with a fever. "Mom, please. Can you come? It's Melissa," she collapsed. I was out of bed before I realized it, my robe thrown over my nightgown, my cane in hand. The street outside was dark and still, the only light spilling from the old lamppost by my driveway. I called a cab because I didn't trust myself to drive in the state I was in. When I arrived at the hospital, Ethan was pacing the waiting room, his face pale and his shirt wrinkled like he'd thrown it on in a panic. His eyes lit up when he saw me, but not with relief, more like desperation. "They said it's exhaustion," he blurted before I even sat down. "She's been working 10-hour days at the foundation, and then helping me with the business at night. She didn't tell me how bad she was feeling. His voice cracked. She just dropped." I took a slow breath. "Is she awake?" "In and out. They've got her on fluids." He dragged a hand down his face, the lines of stress deepening. "Mom, I know what you're thinking, but this isn't some scheme. She's been trying. Really trying." I studied him. His eyes weren't slick with excuses this time. They were raw, rimmed red. A nurse appeared, a woman in her 50s with cropped hair and a clipboard. "Family of Melissa Ellis," she called. Ethan jumped. "Yes, that's me. You can see her now. One visitor at a time." Her eyes flicked to me, kind but firm. "You too, ma'am, later." Ethan rushed off. I lowered myself into a chair, my cane balanced against my knee. The waiting room buzzed softly with the hum of vending machines, the muted glow of a television no one was watching. A young man slept curled in a chair nearby, his hoodie pulled over his face. Across from me, an older couple held hands in silence. I thought of the night Robert had been admitted with chest pains all those years ago, the sterile smell, the dread pressing against my lungs. Back then, Ethan had sat beside me, small and frightened, gripping my hand. Now he was the one pacing halls, carrying fear like a stone in his chest. After nearly an hour, Ethan returned. His eyes were wet, but he looked steadier. "She wants to see you." Melissa lay pale against white sheets, and Ford dripping steadily beside her. Her hair, usually perfect, was loose around her face, damp with sweat. When she saw me, her lips trembled. "Margaret," she whispered. I moved closer, the chair scraping softly as I sat. "You gave us all a scare." I wanted to prove, her throat worked as she swallowed, that I could earn my place. That I wasn't just. Her eyes filled, and she turned her head away. I pushed too hard. I studied her. This was not the smug, dismissive woman who had called my gift junk. This was someone cracked open by exhaustion and fear. Someone who had, maybe for the first time, collided with her own limits. "You don't earn family by bleeding yourself dry," I said quietly. "But you do earn trust by showing up. And you've started. That matters." A tear slid down her cheek. "I'm sorry, Margaret. Truly." For the first time, I believed her. When I left the room, Ethan was waiting. "She's going to be okay," he said quickly, almost like he was trying to convince himself. Then his shoulders sagged. "Mom, I've been a fool. I let her push herself because I was scared of failing. I thought if we just kept moving, we'd get through it. But I almost lost her." I put a hand on his arm. "Fear makes us do foolish things. But it can also make us change." He nodded, his face twisted with guilt. "I don't want to be the kind of man who only learns when life smacks him in the face. I want to do better. For her. For you." For a long moment, I said nothing. I just watched him, this man who had once been my little boy, now stripped of arrogance, forced into humility. "Then start with honesty," I said at last. "And let the rest follow." The following week was quieter. Melissa was discharged with strict instructions: rest, hydration, moderation. She grumbled, but there was a softness to her now, like the sharp edges had dulled. Ethan picked up more at the foundation, fumbling through tasks but not complaining. I saw him sitting with Carl, the CFO, listening intently instead of brushing him off. One evening, he came by my house alone. He sat at the kitchen table while I brewed tea. "Mom," he said, "I need to tell you something." I braced myself. "I applied for a loan 6 months ago. Behind your back. I forged your name on the documents. It didn't go through, the bank flagged it, but I did it." His hands shook around the mug. I was drowning, and instead of asking for help, I tried to steal it. The words hung heavy between us. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. "Thank you for telling me," I said at last. "That doesn't erase what you did. But confession is the first brick of repair." He bowed his head. "I'll make it right. Somehow." I believed, for the first time in a long while, that he might mean it. But trust, I knew, was still fragile. Like glass, once cracked, always weaker. And I had one more test in mind before I decided whether to leave the faucet shut forever, or open it just enough to let love flow back in. The final test wasn't about money. It was about choice. 2 weeks after Melissa came home from the hospital, I called Ethan and Melissa to dinner again. Nothing dramatic, no lawyers, no contracts, just a meal. Roast beef this time, mashed potatoes, green beans with garlic. Food has a way of softening hard conversations, if you let it. They arrived quietly, no flashy clothes, no designer bags. Melissa wore a plain cardigan over jeans, her hair pulled back loosely. Ethan carried a pie he admitted he bought from the store because, "I didn't want to risk burning yours." That made me smile. After we ate, I cleared the dishes and placed a single envelope in the center of the table. Neither of them moved to touch it. "What's this?" Ethan asked, wary. "A choice," I said. "Inside that envelope is a check for $50,000. If you want, you can take it tonight, no strings. Use it however you like, pay off debts, travel, shop, invest. But if you do, you walk away from the foundation, from Carl's mentorship, from everything we've been building these past months. The faucet will close forever." Melissa's breath caught. Ethan's brow furrowed. "And if we don't take it," he asked, "then you keep working. Slowly, steadily. You build on what you've started. The check gets destroyed. The faucet stays closed, but the well, your relationship with me, remains open. And one day when you've proven you can stand, not lean, I'll consider more." Silence pressed down on us. Melissa reached out, her fingers trembling toward the envelope, then pulled them back like it was a flame. "50,000, she whispered. "That's everything we need to catch up." Ethan looked at her, then at me. His face twisted with conflict. "It's too easy," he said slowly. "If we take it, we'll just end up back where we were. Depending. Expecting. Failing." Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "But Ethan, what if?" "No." He cut her off gently, placing his hand over hers. "Mom's right. We can't buy respect. We have to earn it. We've already come this far. We can go further." He pushed the envelope toward me. "Destroy it." Melissa let out a shaky breath, half relief, half grief. Then she nodded. "Destroy it," she echoed. I studied them, my heart tight. For the first time in years, I saw not arrogance or entitlement, but strength. Hard-won, scarred strength. Without a word, I tore the envelope in half. The check inside split down the middle. I placed the pieces in the fire burning behind us, and we watched the flames curl them into ash. No applause. No drama. Just the quiet crackle of something old ending, and something fragile beginning. After that night, things didn't become perfect. Melissa still rolled her eyes sometimes, and Ethan still made mistakes. But they worked. They showed up. They learned to cook simple meals instead of eating out. Melissa grew into her role at the foundation, earning praise that had nothing to do with my name. Ethan's business steadied under Carl's firm guidance. And our family dinners slowly returned, not every week, but often enough that the house felt alive again. They didn't bring expensive wine or empty smiles. They brought themselves, raw and real. That was enough. One Sunday afternoon, months later, I found Melissa in my living room alone, flipping through the photo album. She traced Ethan's childhood pictures with her fingertip, tears sliding down her cheeks. When she noticed me, she flushed. "I see now," she said softly. "It was never junk. It was the map we should have been following." I placed a hand on her shoulder. Better to find the map late than never at all. She smiled through her tears, and for the first time, I believed she truly meant it. Ethan joined us then, carrying a tray of tea. He set it down clumsily, nearly spilling, and laughed. "I'm still learning." I shook my head, smiling. "We all are." That night, after they left, I sat in my armchair by the fire, the quiet wrapping around me like a quilt. I thought of Robert, of the years we had built brick by brick, of the child we had raised who had wandered and returned. They had tested me. They had betrayed me. But in the end, they had also learned. I wasn't naive. I knew trust would always carry scars. But scars don't mean weakness. They mean healing. I closed the photo album and placed it gently on the mantel. For the first time in a long time, I felt not just strong, but at peace. And that, more than money, more than revenge, was the gift I had been waiting for.